Welcome back, everyone. This is the Bri Cry, and today we're going over AMC's guide after playing him in every single lane in Smite Conquest. Before we get into that, I want to give a little bit of an update. On January 23rd, that week, Monday through Friday, I will be away on vacation, and the plan is to release all of the guide videos that I'm behind on that week. This one's obviously dropping a little bit earlier than that, but I have a few gods I have to catch up onto. As of right now, you guys have seen the Anubis support video that is dropped. That was yesterday. The rest of his videos are going to come out, and probably the rest of the Ao Kuang videos before the 23rd, something like that. We might be a couple videos into Ao Kuang by the 23rd, but once that drops, the 23rd, Monday through Friday, are going to be pretty much all guide videos, I think is how it's going to end up. But by then, once I come back from vacation, I will be all done or caught up with the guide videos, so we can get into a normal schedule of how my videos are going to drop. It's going to be the 5 roles played all the way across Smite Conquest, and then we would do a guide video reviewing how I felt they did in each lane, what builds worked well, and then going over obviously their abilities and such. So we'll get into a nice normal schedule, and you guys will know kind of what video is coming next and how that works. But AMC was one of the first ones I got into, mainly because he's an ability-based hunter. He's very much so like a Neath, where he builds all power and ability-based items. You can build some very heavy-hitting attack speed items. Of course, you can build the meta crit build that everyone builds nowadays on him as well, and just left-click and you'll do just fine. But he's very cool and very refreshing because he's not one of the hunters that you have to build the main meta on. You can build him very ability-based and do very well and outperform most hunters that build the meta now. So his abilities are very interesting. We'll go into his passive first, which isn't a crazy passive. It actually doesn't do anything other than pair up with your abilities. It just explains the fact that he has bees. These bees will assault anyone that they get put onto for, I believe, 2 seconds. Every half second it does a tick. Yes, and then it reveals them on the mini map, so anybody with those bees on them, everyone on the map can see, kind of like a Nuwa ult. It'll let them see them on the mini map if they're coated with the bees. These bees do quite a bit of damage to anyone, and if you are hitting them while they have the bees on them, it'll extend the bees cooldown by 1 second. So as long as you're hitting them and they have the bees on them, they will continue having the bees, and once you stop hitting them, it'll have a 1 second cooldown and the bees will go away. So that's pretty cool. You can continuously have that ability proccing as long as you're on top of that person and hitting them. His number 1 ability is his bee tower here that he places all over the place. He's one of the hunters that has an accessory that he carries around with him. He can plant these from spawn all the way to his tower, so he can get there pretty quick. They do provide a movement speed buff. He is the fastest hunter. He will chase anyone down if you don't take his towers out. And some of his abilities help him chase as well. But he's very quick. He's very fast. He's a fast boy. And it's thanks to this tower here. He also has an attack speed boost, a very big attack speed boost. Puts him to a point where you don't have to worry about building too many attack speed items on him. He'll still be able to hit pretty fast. So you can focus in on those power items and ability proccing items that'll help you with your tick damage. Other than that, you go into his 2. His 2 is a very fast, very large line ability that he shoots out, a little ball of bees that'll proc the bees onto people. You don't have to have these towers in order to proc it. That only comes into effect on your 3rd ability, but you'll see quite a few ticks off with that, and as long as you're hitting them, they'll continue to hit. And then the 3rd ability is going to be honey that you spray on the ground. As you can see, it'll shoot some bees onto the ground at the honey, and anybody who walks through it will get that tick damage as well. It also applies a 20% slow on anybody that walks through it. Not a crazy slow, but enough to catch them. You're already faster than them, so it helps out. So one little tidbit of information on the 3rd ability that I almost forgot to include here in the video. I just wanted to go back and throw this in. On his 3rd ability, you don't have to be within range of the tower to activate it. If you need to extend your range out, you can also use your 2 to activate the bees. You just have to throw that 2 over the bee trail, and that will get that honey sparked. I'll go over here real quick just to show you what that looks like without being within the range of the tower here. So once you initially throw it out, you're not going to have any actives. Nothing's really going to happen until you throw that out, and then it will activate. The final ability is his ultimate. His ultimate is interesting, to say the least. It's a very thin but very fast stinger that you throw out and hits for a very absurd amount of damage. Once stuck into them, they are crippled and slowed, so it makes it impossible for them to get away from you as long as you're quick about it. And then it drops onto the ground. As you can see, it stays stuck in them for about 3 seconds. It hits the ground, and about 4 seconds later, it'll disappear. You need to pick your Stinger up. If you don't pick your Stinger up, you'll have the worst cooldown on your ultimate of any god in the game, maybe second to Morgan. I'm not 100% sure, or Morgan. I'm not 100% sure about that. I'd have to look into her cooldowns, but it's fairly close to that. It's absurd. It's a very large cooldown. So pick your Stinger up. It reduces the cooldown by 60%. So you get it back pretty quick. If you build cooldown items, it helps as well. Other than that, that's kind of how his kit works. You also have something I didn't mention about his 1 here. If you are near the 1, it gives you a passive heal. It's not a huge amount. I think it's 12 once it's maxed out. Yeah, 12 heals once it's packed out, once you're standing next to it. It's not a Sylvanas flower, but it is definitely something that helps if you need a little bit of heals to get back into a fight without going all the way back to your tower, or if you're just sitting under tower and trying to get that passive healing back so you can stay on lane in order to get some extra gold. It helps out a lot. Also, anybody that gets pretty close to the tower, within 20 units, will be revealed on the mini map. It's not as big as a ward, but it's something. If someone blindly walks past his tower without taking out, which won't happen often, they will get revealed. And if they do take it out, then it's also an alarm to let you know, hey, one of my towers went down. It was about here, and so I know someone's over there. So there's that as well. Getting into his roles and where I feel like he belongs. Right before we get into that, I'll show you kind of what his kit dump looks like. We have a Ymir pulled up here. His kit dump's pretty easy, pretty simple. Basically, you have his basic attacks, which hit pretty hard. You have his honey that throws on the ground and procs his ticks. And then you also have his ult for a finisher. Your honey is very good to save and hang on to. I say that because if you're trying to chase someone down and you get them low, having your honey to slow them is really good if you don't have your ultimate. So always hang on to that to the last second so that you can slow them if you need to chase down. It's also good for clearing waves out, but most of the time you're going to clear your waves with your second ability, which is an insane clear. Par none, and the carry lane is definitely going to outclear most people. So that kind of leads us into our lanes and where he belongs and where he doesn't belong. He doesn't have the beef in order to be able to peel off people and take hits for gods in order to save them. So that's a downfall. It doesn't matter how tanky you build him, he's never going to be able to mitigate or take enough damage to be sensible as a buffer layer between you and their team. So he doesn't work well there. And then on top of that, his abilities are just not really good for peeling or getting people off of you. He has his slow, but it's not much of a slow with his honey, so I guess technically you could spray it across the ground, but no one's not gonna run through it to get to you. And I don't think the 20% slow is enough to warrant him being a good support character in order to peel them away from you. He has his ultimate, which cripples someone, so I guess one single target person you could stop from maybe leaping on them and slow them a little bit, but his kit's just not really good in the support lane. And because his kit's not good in the support lane and he's already just naturally squishy, he doesn't belong there. So that's kind of where I draw the line on support. I will not ever choose him in the support lane, no matter really what circumstance, other than just because of this series. I did well in the support lane. He's fun in the support lane, but most of the time it's not going to work out, especially if they make it to late game. You're probably going to end up hurting your team more than you help them. No, not probably. You're definitely going to hurt your team more than you help them. So going after that, I'm going to say it's probably the jungle lane for two reasons. First off, his early game is atrocious. He doesn't have enough clear. He doesn't have enough damage. His pressure early on is not going to be anywhere close to a competing assassin. So any other jungle on the enemy team is going to outpressure you. They're going to outfarm you. They're going to outmaneuver you. They're going to get lane to lane faster than you. They're going to put off more damage than you. You just don't have enough damage in the early game to be able to gank in and take someone out. You don't have enough, kit. Your kit doesn't work around ganking people. You can get to and from places very quickly if you max out. But once you get there, if you, go for the attack or the movement speed to be able to get to and from pretty quick, you're only able to attack fast, right? So you're just a hunter on someone's lane. Other than that, you might be able to secure a kill with your bees. You could cripple someone and stop them from getting away. So maybe late game he works okay as a jungle. But he does definitely, because of his early game, he doesn't belong in the jungle lane. So that's kind of the reason why I keep him away from the jungle. His next lane is going to be the solo lane. That's mainly because, again, goes straight into the fact that he's really not that great early. His clear is okay. It gets better as he gets on, and he kind of builds up. Once he has a fully stacked Transcendence, he does okay and has that power. But again, he doesn't really work there. He's going to get bullied by the warrior. He doesn't have really any escapes. He's quick, but he has no escapes, so he can't keep distance. He has to kind of fight his way against the warrior. Maybe you can keep up with clear on the minions. Maybe you can keep up with farming in the jungle when necessary and staying on top of your mana. I just feel like if you get close enough to clear those waves out, you're going to get bullied out by anybody that's pretty good in the solo lane. And I just don't see a good way of building him in the solo lane that's going to keep you alive. You kind of have to commit to a full damage build with AMC in order for him to be useful, especially in the late game. So he doesn't really work there. And unfortunately, even if you were to go full damage in the late game, he's not the best person, and not even close to being the best person in the solo lane to have as an additional person in the end game. Once everyone comes together in those group fights, I don't feel like AMC is the best person to be coming over from solo lane to group up with everyone. You know, you're better off having like a power mage added to the team that can do a lot of area damage, or another beefcake, like another, you know, warrior or guardian or something like that would work out. So that is why solo is in the middle of the field there. The next lane is going to be carry. Surprisingly, mid takes the cake, but we'll talk about why in a second. I'm sure you guys can guess why, but carry is not bad. Carry is pretty good. It's very close to mid lane. I don't think he's going to get out pressured by another hunter. Even the meta hunters, you know, your Ishtars right now, that are just constantly being picked and played into the carry lane, and some of your other main hunters that you see. Kernanos is very popular right now. I feel like he's going to do just fine clearing with him. I feel like he does a lot of presence and pressure damage, even if you don't build the typical meta build with the crit chance. And it's massive attack speed. I feel like you're still do fine. You still have your kit. You still have your power that you do. You still are probably going to outclear them because of your abilities. If you can poke a lot better than they can because of your kit. Overall, I feel like you'll do just fine on the carry lane. I feel like you have just enough presence in order to stand and brawl with any hunter you come face to face with on the carry game. Obviously, in the beginning, maybe you're going to get out cleared a bit, just until you get that power online to be able to clear one shot with your two. But it's negligible. I don't think games are won or lost in the first 5 minutes of the game, unless every single person feeds 3 kills and you're down 15 in the first 5 minutes. Then maybe it might be impossible, but I've come back from worse, so never out. So carry lane, and then the winner is mid. I just feel like he does really well in mid. He's a very magey hunter with his abilities and how they work. I feel like he does just fine against a mage in the mid lane. I feel like he does exceedingly well at being able to rotate over to other lanes, and that's kind of why, especially in the mid game, once he has his towers fully maxed out, he can move in and out of the jungle very quickly. Just as I said in the Agni video, his mobility is really key. So he's able to move over to lanes. He's able to move into objectives in the mid lane, take your Gold Furies and your Fire Giants and Pyromancers very quickly. He's able to get over and help people on the duo lane and the solo lanes if necessary, and he moves faster than most gods. Maybe a movement speed Poseidon outmoves him to the other lane, but most of the time you're able to move off your lane and get back to it in time to be able to clear out. So your presence is really nice to have in the mid lane. I also feel like even against your top meta playing mages right now, like your Vulcans, your Poseidons, you're still going to do just fine. I feel like you're going to be able to clear with them. You're going to be able to poke just like they're able to poke you out, and you're going to be able to hit just as hard as they hit. You actually hit harder basic wise than any other mage is going to. You just have to be able to poke with them, which you can the way your kit works. You're going to be able to poke them just fine. The tick is very nice to have, and then you always have that B presence if you're on top of them hitting them. Most of the time you're going to do more damage face to face against a mage unless they have their ultimate anyway. So I feel like he does very, very well in the mid lane, and I feel like that's why he belongs there more so than the carry lane right now. Season 10 might bring some changes with that. They did very well at pushing mages off of the carry lane with the changes they made with attack speed mages. You know, you never see Sol or Oleron over there anymore, so you could see a huge patch that comes out in Season 10 that changes this, but I doubt it. AMC has always been that kind of hunter where he's very mage-like with his abilities. So getting into the builds on AMC, I have his primary build that I kind of tried to stick to. I'd say this is his universal build for me. Obviously, people are going to build him different. I've had a couple comments on my Agni guide that, you know, said, why not this item instead of this item? And yes, there's other items that can be plugged and played with. I don't feel like there's a one shoe fits all on gods, but I do feel like this works very well. And the reason I say that, and we'll get into why it meshes very well with AMC, we'll start off with Bluestone Pendant and Crusher. These both provide tick damages on abilities. So if you hit them with your bees, they're taking tick damage from the bees. Then you take into effect the Bluestone Pendant tick from hitting someone with an ability, and then you take into the effect the Crusher tick from getting hit with ability. That's 3 different ticks that are stacking on top of each other and doing damage over a certain amount of time to someone. That steamroll on top of AMC, especially in the late game when he has his full power built out, is nasty. You'll half health someone, if not more, on tick damage alone. And then you have your abilities or your basic attacks to follow up with that, especially if you're pelting someone and keeping those bees on them. Now, the bees do not, even if the bees stay on them and continue to proc, they're not going to re-proc Bluestone Brooch, so that doesn't work like that. They did that away quite a while ago. Where you're able to recycle it, but it does that initial, tick, triple tick on someone is nasty. And then you keep the bees on them as well to keep that tick going. You'll melt someone away. So that's why I build these two. You also get your first attack speed boost with your towers being leveled, and then Crusher. You can build Crusher before Transcendence. Unfortunately, Transcendence was nerfed a little bit, so it hurt AMC Banes. That's why you probably don't see him too much right now. It still gives great mana, which is good. He is very kit dumpy, so you're always using your abilities. You're going to want to have a huge mana pool. And it still provides okay power. It's not great. There are items that are better than it, of course. But I still feel like it warrants being built on an AMC just because you have that huge mana boost as well as getting some of that passive MP5 back, and then all that mana is converted over to power. So it's still a good power spike. Do I feel like an item can be substituted there? Yes, but because I'm an AMC main and I've always built Transcendence on them, it's hard for me to change my mind on it. So there's that reason. Heartseeker. Secret sauce, just like I mentioned the secret sauce for Agni with Soul Reaver. Secret sauce for AMC is Heartseeker. It gives you a huge power spike. It's a great item to build right there around that 4th spot. You could spend it out a little bit more if you need some more attack speed and go Quisai first maybe, or Executioner first maybe, but Heartseeker is an early mid item that I would build right around that 4 slot. It gives you that power spike, it gives you some penetration, it gives you that additional ability damage based on their health. So it gives you that physical power boost, it gives you the penetration, and then it also scales up with your power. So the more power you have, which works with Transcendence, it works very well with the Bluestone Brooch as well as Crusher, because they both give you a nice little power boost. And this scales up, and it caps at 350, I believe, but it gives you additional ability damage based on your maximum power. So if you max that power out at 350, which we're almost there on this one, 333, then you get huge hitting abilities, which works very well with AMC. Again, secret sauce of AMC right there is Heartseeker. I feel like you need to build this item on him every single time, and you will absolutely decimate people. You will destroy them with health. Your basics alone are hitting hard, but your kit is going to almost one-shot people with this build out. After that, you go into Quisai. Quisai, of course, is the attack speed item that destroys tanks. Based on people's maximum health, you're doing more basic attack damage. It only gets higher and higher. Anything over 3,000 health, and you're going to absolutely ruin them. So Quisai is good. It also gives you some more power. But the biggest thing is getting that attack speed boost. And now this is why this build works so well. You have Heavy Executioner. So Heavy Executioner is something that says it has a cap at attack speed cannot exceed 1.9. And even with your towers, your B tower is fully upgraded, and this build we're right at it, 1.9. So you still get the benefit of all the attack speed. You don't lose any attack speed, so you're able to double stack Quisai into Heavy Executioner and use your buff from your towers and still be underneath the threshold or right at the threshold to be able to use this build. And Heavy Executioner is really good because of the power or the physical protection reduction, especially in late game fights. It's huge because if you have to finish someone off with your basics, or you run into a frontline tank and you need to do off some quick damage, that Heavy Executioner paired up with Quisai is going to melt them, and you still are able to use the cap of 1.9 attack speed and have all your attack speed in there. So that's really nice. That's kind of the kit I go to for your main build for AMC. After that, we're going to go into the tank build. I guess we'll get out of the way. Not that I would ever actually do this, but it's pretty much the same thing that I would build on every single tank, and you're going to hear me say that over and over again. It's the only way you can really build a tank right now that makes sense. But The only difference is probably you don't see a lot of people build Benevolence, so that's cool. But Benevolence into Compassion just for that basic attack deal. Bonus damage based on equal to your maximum health. So you build health items and auras. You're going to build Gauntlet because everyone builds Gauntlet, and Gauntlet is just broken. So Gauntlet, this gives you your health. And then it also gives you some health sustain on top of your health from your towers. You can pretty much get to full health just by standing by your towers and having Gauntlet of Thieves. You don't have to return back to base, so that's a cool little, they pair up together pretty well. Then you go into Shogun's. Shogun's is going to give you attack speed. I built this pretty early on, especially since the support's going to end up on the mid lane pretty early, and you're going to be going into a mage anyway, so Shogun's helps out. And then Sovereignty is probably going to be the item following that for help. Most of the time you're going to have an assassin as the jungle, so this will help your mid lane and anybody you're standing with to get those physical protections so they're not getting beat up too heavily by the jungle, hopefully. It also helps against the hunter in the late game. You're also going to build Pestilence for lifesteal, magical protections, and a little bit of health as well. And then depending on the matchup that you go into, Spirit Robe is going to be really strong in most gods nowadays. You're going to have at least one that's going to do some type of hard crowd control effect on the team. So most of the time you're going to build Spirit Robe. It gives you a lot of protections. It gives you cooldown reduction, which is pretty good for AMC, seeing as that his kit is kind of cooldown dependent. And then it gives you some crowd control reduction and additional mitigations if you are hit by that hard crowd control effect. It helps out if you are trying to be an AMC tank and you need to stand in front of someone getting destroyed and you're going to eat that hard CC, then you get the mitigations that kind of help you survive, but you're probably not going to survive, but at least maybe your teammate will. And you'll survive long enough so that they can get away, hopefully. So this would be my kind of go-to build. You can substitute out an item if you're not having problems with lifesteal. You can go Heartward Amulet into Stronghold. Not necessary. You can also do the same thing with Shoguns. I just like having Shoguns because that gives me attack speed. It gives my hunter attack speed. So it pairs really well, especially once we get Animosity. If we can get Animosity built in the late game, you have the attack speed and you have the additional basic attack damage based on your health. So this is really good. You have a lot of health. 3,400. Unfortunately, it melts very quickly on an AMC. So that would be our tank build. So coming out of the support build, the thing is like the first build that I show you is like the build I would probably build that in the carry lane. I'd probably build that in the mid lane. I'd probably build that in the solo lane. The jungle would be a little bit different because I would go a jungle starter. I would go Bumba's dagger instead, but I would build everything else the exact same. So his build doesn't really change across the lanes, I would say. There are other builds you can do for him. I can get into those a little bit and just show you kind of some alternate ideas if you don't like the first build, or just to give you other options. But he's going to be very similar. I don't think you go a healthier build or a more tankier build on the solo lane just because you need to be full power as AMC to be useful in the late game. Going tanky with him doesn't help anybody. So that's kind of why solo isn't the best place for him, but it's not awful. But some builds you could go on AMC if you wanted to try something different. I would say probably your go-to is a safe bet, always Bluestone. Not always Bluestone. You could build the meta build and go, Death Toll into the full crits if you wanted to, and go sustain. Possibly a better option in the solo lane. I may have built that in the solo lane. I think I went the crit build just so I had a lot of sustain up against who I was facing. But we'll get into that in a second. But for the primary build, it's either going to be the Transcendence build, or you could go something like just keep it simple and follow the entire Jotun's tree. You go Jotun's Cunning, which gives you reduction in cooldowns based on wit on your abilities. Then you go into all the rest of the tree. You get your attack speed from crushing, your tick damage. You get brawlers for anti-heal. You get additional penetration on your abilities from Titan's Bane. And then you can finish off with a Quaesire or an Executioner. And this is still a very strong build. Probably be Quaesire. Just because you can't go into the upgrades for Executioner. You still get the additional reduction in protections if you need it, but most of the time you can just go Quaesire and you'll still melt through anyone that built protections anyway, so Quaesire probably a better item here. And then if this is probably, to be fair, I'll retract and say that there's not a specific way you need to build solo to be able to do it well. You probably would go the meta build in the solo lane just so you have the sustain. So you could go Death's Toll to get some of that sustain back. You get the health and the mana back for hitting your basic attacks. And then you go into your Devos, which is what every single hunter builds nowadays, and get that lifesteal going. and then you just go into a full crit build. You could build the typical crit build. I think on mine I did a little bit of a meme build. I went into Shadow Steel for the anti-heal, and then I went bows, I'm pretty sure. I know I built Atlantis bow, which gives you crit chance as well. And then I'm pretty sure I went Silver Branch and then Quisai, which I think is just enough to do enough damage to, you know, not have to go full crits. You're still going to hit your proc chances because you're still sitting at 40%. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt. You also get the agility off of Atlantis bows as well, so it helps you kind of close in on people. Not that you need it as AMC, because you have the movement speed off of his B towers anyway. So that kind of goes into the builds of AMC, the different ways you can build them, I guess. But again, the main one is the one I went over first, and that's probably the one that I would stick to if I were you. So that rounds up AMC. I hope you guys enjoyed the guide. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment. If you guys are enjoying the content, or if you're new here and you're seeing this for the first time, if you check out my other A to Z every role series and you enjoy that as well, and you kind of like the content that I'm putting out, I would appreciate a subscribe. It does let me know that I'm doing well. It lets me know that you want to come back and see the content. Likes do the exact same thing. It lets me know on specific videos that I did well on them. So if you guys wouldn't mind, obviously I would appreciate it. You don't have to, but I'll just throw that out there. But other than that, this has been Bri Cry, and I hope you guys enjoyed. See you on the next one.